Now, there's a lot of problems that I specifically have with this executioner, and I'm gonna get straight to the point. 2011X feels very weak and unsatisfying to play, and that's a big claim, but I'm here today to talk about the flaws with this character. Now, back then, I almost had no problems dealing with a competent survivor team. Most of his abilities were fast and easy to learn. Well, that's until his first shadow nerf happened, and that was the Invis Tech nerf. Now, I understand how annoying it can be to have the EXE drop like a missile to earn a free hit, though nerfing the studs also means nerfing how close you can actually get to the survivor. Back then, you can unviz to nearly surprise the survivor, but now, almost no matter what, you're always going to find yourself starting a chase and avoiding stuns more than using this ability for surprises. Now, this wasn't that bad. Sure, it made it a lot harder to catch survivors off guard, though nothing wasn't too bad until the second shadow nerf came. And that was making the down threshold go from 10 all the way to 0. Now, I'm going to be straight up honest, this was probably the most infuriating change that's ever happened in 2011X's kit. The amount of times you deserve to be rewarded for downing a survivor from the misplay, but instead they're left at 0 to 10 HP can get really annoying. And I had a situation where I made a Knuckles 0 HP, and yet he still gets to live and walk every day. I spent nearly minutes trying to chase a survivor that should have gone down a while ago, all because they're at 2 HP. This issue mainly comes from Knuckles and Amy. Usually you should be able to down survivors in 2 hits with the rage mode, though since the threshold is gone, Amy is a lot more of a time waster than you think. Back when the 10 threshold HP was in the game, if you were skillful enough with Amy, you could stall long enough with Sun in order to take 3 hits from rage. Though, typically it was extremely hard to pull off, but now since that's removed, it's almost guaranteed that you're going to have to deal 3 hits to Amy, considering she will be left with 2 to 3 HP after hitting her 2 times with rage. But don't forget that she can also heal survivors above 51 HP for them to take another hit, which makes it even more aggravating, bro, to deal with. And then we have the last shadow nerf that puts 2011X basically in the coffin, which is making the down happen at 14 HP instead of 25 HP. Now, this change basically made charge extremely weak to use for high health targets. Instead of using it to deal damage to survivors, now you're stuck with an ability that should only be used for downing survivors, in which I haven't even gone over yet. Now, I understand how cheap charge was during solos, but decreasing the health for getting down only allows for survivors to escape faster. What made charge so good was how it can get the job done to make sure the survivor can't escape when you grab them with medium health. But now, since the down happens at 14 HP, the survivor has to be below 34 health in order to confirm the kill. Charge was something mainly used to grab targets that are alone in order to create pressure and slowly drain a lot of health, though now the value isn't even worth to go for, considering the survivor will escape the grab ASAP. And now most of the time with the ability is doing 2 hits, then charge, which half of the time doesn't work, considering the survivor you're chasing will always be near the team, meaning any of those teammates can take the grab in order to let the survivor escape. Now, the maps in this game are beautifully designed, but some are just almost unwinnable and need immediate patches. The 2 I'm referring to is Not Perfect and You Can't Run. These maps have so many issues on being survivor side that it's kind of insane how nothing has really been done about it, except for You Can't Run, but Not Perfect, that's a different story. Now, I'm gonna say real quickly on what makes Not Perfect a flawed map: the void, loops, bumpers, and springs. Now, with the void, it just makes rage mode completely useless, and even starting chases useless. The void is just to get out of a chase card to avoid getting downed or killed. The loops are just the amount of springs that Cream, Knuckles, Eggman, and even Amy can abuse. Usually Cream should be the most vulnerable target, but she somehow almost turns into a character you can never catch, because if she takes the same route with the springs and the bumpers for glide, then GG's, you can't catch her. The bumpers can be abused to make infinite loops. You ragdoll twice, and then you're free to use them without ragdolling. This just makes where 2011X can literally not catch you, since on some bumpers, he just does not bounce, making it a free getaway for any survivor. Imagine using rage mode and just seeing the same survivor abuse the same bumpers, knowing that you can't catch them because you don't have your mobility options. It just becomes really frustrating knowing that you can't do nothing about it. It's just something that can be abused over and over again. And let's not also forget how strong Tails can be in this map too. He really does show his potential on what can happen with this open map, which also makes this even more of a salt to the wound. Then we have You Can't Run, and dear lord, man, the amount of changes to this map and still being hard to play for 2011X makes me feel somewhat bad. Now, the problem with this map is how abusable the 2 springs are in the corner of the map. You will always at least have a survivor stall with this loop, which makes it super dreadful, since the cooldown for the springs are pretty short. Most of the time, the survivor will use their drop roll and cooldowns to stall for time until the springs come back, allowing them to repeat the process. And then let's not forget about Knuckles. He's basically uncatchable when he reaches to the second spring due to glide having no stamina meter, which causes him to stay in the air for a huge amount of time. Another issue is tail spots. Now I get that he can reach to unreachable spots since he's a sniper, but oh, dear lord man, most of the time he's up on a single tire area where invisibility makes you fall since you teleport behind the survivors, and then God's trickery can just be baitable if he jumps forward and then back. And that's not my only issue. The core is also a unique mechanic with the 5 exits, but you can almost get no pressure during it because the survivors already know where the exit is going to be, so they're just going to completely, you know, run towards it and stay there. Though I still do like the concept of it. Now don't get me wrong, I think 2011X's kit can actually be really fun to use. It's just he has things that don't make it fun, which is tunneling, targeting, and RNG. Now most of the time, you're most likely going to be using the kit for dodging stuns or using mobility to catch up to a target. Though, dear lord man, when I say I hate God's Trickery in Rage mode, I really do. 1v2s up to 1v4s are mostly impossible to win against a smart team because most of the time, they know that that's your best tool is Rage mode. So what do? They just run away until the timer reaches 120. Metal is the only way to win a 1v4. But if it's a metal that runs away, tough luck, you lost. Now with Rage mode, most of the time it just doesn't feel rewarding or fun to use at all. Sure, you really feel like you have that power role as the executioner, but it's the main ability that decides whether you win or not, and that's just not enjoyable in my opinion, and probably not for a lot of others. Mixed amounts take way longer while also not having a lot of counterplay, and in general it just feels like a slightly rushed ability that doesn't feel fun nor interacting to go against. God's Trickery feels kinda lame to use, I won't lie. Yes, I think it's sick to face while also using it to dodge survivor stuns, though having it target a random player just feels like it destroys the entire purpose of it, you know? Why can't I just go to a Pacific survivor to enhance more pressure to the one I'm committed to? Having it target a full HP metal or Eggman just feels so demotivating and wastes so much time. So we're not allowed the ability to give us an option for, you know, to specifically select a survivor on the ability. Of course, you wouldn't be able to target the survivor over and over again, but you know what I mean. You guys know what I mean. And then lastly, some issues I have with charges. Sometimes the target just doesn't go down. You know, there's a bug for some reason. I don't know if it got fixed yet, but there's just been a bug where EXE just cannot down them. Shout out to Rect. He's shown me that you can literally stand on top of a survivor during a charge, and when that final blow hits for that grab survivor, you can send over that survivor so they can't get down. And then for some reason, when you're in rage mode and you get hit with a stun during charge, you take the normal amount of a stun duration, which wastes a ton of time and allows the whole entire team to reposition, you know, and it takes a lot of decent time. But that's just my problem with the kit. Now, from the hours I have on this game, I feel like the issue is you spend so much time trying to avoid the stuns, which allows one survivor to easily counter another survivor's mistake. If you bet out the knuckles, right? Counter, for example, someone else can get him out of it. If you avoid a metal/sonic stuns, they can redirect their movement away from you and waste more time. Amy forces you to back off from her with her hammer swing, causing you to lose an amount of time due to either her speed or amount of time she gets until her hammer goes away, while also having a huge loop potential, which makes catching up really annoying. Tails and Cream can stall in the air obviously a lot, you know, abuse the springs, and if you try to use charge to punish them, then most likely the stunners like Metal Sonic can charge into you, which he can get a full heal with his as long as he stuns you and he's with the Eggman. Any mistake you make with 2011X will cost a lot of time. Yes, he's strong against survivors that don't work together or you know, aren't as competent as a team that literally stay together. But when there's a competent team that stays together, it almost makes it impossible to secure any value for damage. There's just so much you gotta keep track of with all the sound effects, cooldowns on survivors, and positioning, while also knowing which survivors to go for at the start of the game. It just makes it soft for the starter player to understand, and I always try to learn 2011X from the amount I played him, but when I win as 2011X, I just don't feel like I did good, you know? I feel like the survivors just played really poorly, and then the problem is 2011X is a single target killer, which does work out well at picking off and targeting or tunneling. But then when, you know, there's a whole team that sticks together, it just completely gets rid of his whole entire idea. You know, unless the survivors are kind of dumb, you know, not together, but you know what I mean. Next problem we got is disabling EXE chances. Now, this idea is really not on paper, you know. Forsaken, well, I don't really know a lot of other games, Die of Death, all these other kind of asymmetrical games have this option. But that's because they have killers, you know. They have a bunch of variety of killers. And when you only have one executioner to play, it just makes all the lobbies -1 chances, of which ruins the rotation of games. Because sure, I want to beat EXE, but I also want to beat Survivor from time to time. But dear lord, I've been getting consistent lobbies of me only being the executioner. It's nice to have this as a feature, but it should have came right after version 0.2. It takes just one bad experience, which I can guarantee most likely will happen with the starter person, that plays this game for them to disable EXE to never play them again. At this point, I think Not Perfect should just be, honestly, get immediate changes. There's just so many things wrong with the map. Along with You Can't Run, I've been noticing old, like, the gate changes, but none of them really been helping out, I won't lie. For the loops, maybe might have to even remove the second spring, because that's the main loop that causes these issues. And Not Perfect, like I said, needs changes. Remove Rage Mode entirely and replace it with a different ability to further help with the stun chaining, affecting his kit, considering he cannot handle crowds of survivors at all. Or, you know, rework Rage Mode, in which I had one idea that I had in mind was allowing Rage Mode to be more of an ability to pop to empower moves, or just straight up use for a buff, and, you know, use it throughout the match, which can be earned based off hits instead of relying on being stunned. Think of it as a boost for stats, you know, instead of relying on the ability entirely, you can use it for multiple times throughout the match without it infecting the timer, while also being a more weakened version of the current Rage Mode we have. It would feel a lot better just to at least have someone advantage to use in specific situations, and actually make survivors get pressured a lot more, and then God's Trickery could be a bit better by making it controllable, you know, but not being able to target the same survivor, like I said earlier. Make the down health threshold 5 HP max only for 2011X only, on the only executioner. Bring the charge down the threshold to 20 HP. Slightly make the end light faster upon appearing at invisibility. Give Metal a 4-second cooldown for healing, similar to Sonic after hitting a stun, to not cheaply use it to regain all the health back with Eggman. Then lastly, keep the charge down threshold at 14 HP only when it's last man standing, because it's actually really balanced, I won't lie. For what it is, I think it actually makes, you know, last man standings last longer, and it's more funner. And one last thing. My boy Knuckles needs a stamina meter for how long he can glide for, because that thing you can abuse for so long, I won't lie. But other than that, I'm trying to wing it, bro. My voice is getting tired. I'm sorry if I kind of pronounce things. But other than that, that's the Galley Yap video. And yeah, it's my problems.